All right, we're here with Rebecca Mountain. Knowing is not enough. Welcome to the Expert Speaker Podcast, Rebecca.
Hey, thanks very much. I'm excited to be here.
So, you're author of how many books now?
Three that are published. I've just finished writing my fourth. That'll be coming out in probably mid 2026.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And we were talking before we pressed record about the knowing and doing gap, the gap between
Hmm.
what people know they should do and what they're actually doing, and how we close that gap. Let's go
That's
back
right.
before we start talking about the gap. Give us the backstory, Rebecca, before you got to here.
Mhm. If you go back far enough, I grew up in a fundamentalist Christian cult. And that is different from mainstream religions because it creates a ton of fear and isolation. So while I was out and about with normal people, I was very much not to interact with them. So I had no friends at school. There were no parties. There was no dances. There was no prom. There was no movies. There was no TV. There was no makeup. There was no jewelry. Think of something fun. The answer was no, especially for girls, right? And so that's how I grew up. And I didn't quite fit the mold. I kept sort of getting in trouble. I'm very effusive, I'm very creative. And so I would often get punished, like just in trouble by the leadership of the cult. And so I learned to teach myself to be a very small thing. And so, because they make you very, very afraid that if you do not follow the rules, well, damnation this life and the next. And so they have lots of stories, very scary stories, that they like to share, and they keep you there. Because some people say, how do smart people stay in cults? And the simple answer is because human beings have fear. It doesn't matter how much money you make, it doesn't matter how smart you are, emotions are separate. And so, through fear, by telling us that if we even thought about leaving, there's two ways you're going to die, cancer or a car crash, for which they had lots of wonderful stories, you stay in it because it's terrifying. And remember, I have no connections outside, so I have no way of balancing the messaging. So, fast forward to my early 30s, I married into it. I was married at 21. I had two children in my mid 20s, and I was miserable. Like, because I went back to work after both children, and then I was completely cut off socially from the church because a woman is not supposed to work. So now I had no people outside. I had no people inside. I had a marriage that was loveless, and I had two boys that I was desperately trying to raise basically by myself because that's the role of the woman and work full time. I was spiraling out of control. I was getting fired or I was quitting. I was unhappy and just becoming smaller and smaller and smaller. And so I started doing very high risk things. So this one year, I got nine speeding tickets in a 12-month period. And they weren't tiny ones, they were like just under road racing because I was running away from everything and I didn't know what to do. And so it all came to a head on March 17, 2008. As you know, I live in Canada, so March is still cold. It was an early morning, driving like I normally did, 110 in a 60 zone. And I hit the on ramp of a highway at about 80 and I hit black ice. And so my car spun around backwards and it went off the embankment. Probably ended up going 70 as fast as I was going. And it was a high embankment. So my car arced, landed on my hood, crashed against the steering wheel, glass shattered, tires exploded. Made quite the light show because it was dark in March in Canada. And when I stopped spinning and I wasn't dead, my first thought was like, clearly I'm not dead. Woohoo. But then I was like, they're wrong. This was my car crash. I'm not dead. I don't have cancer, but I'm not dead. I should be, by all intents and purposes, based on what they told me, that I should be gone, and I wasn't. And so, as I stood on the side of the road with my flattened car, shaking the glass out of my head, I had no injuries except some lacerations on the top of my head and mild whiplash. It was like a miracle because my car was flat. There was about 6 inches between the steering wheel and the roof, and that's where my head was. I don't know how. Anyway, and that was it. I was just like, I'm out. So that was March. By August, I'd left the church. By October, I was separated. By December, I was divorced. By January, I was unemployed because I worked for the people in the church and they didn't exactly side with me. And so you have to understand like that's terrible for most people, but as imagine you don't even know how to get movie tickets. That's what I went out with. I didn't know how to get a mortgage. I didn't know how to pay bills. I didn't know how to do anything. I barely knew how to feed myself. But that was better than living there. My family turned their back on me. Of course, I had no friends, so I had no guidance. I was trying to figure out Christmas for the first time. I remember I bought a Christmas tree and I think I just leaned it up against the wall because I didn't didn't know what else to do with it. Never celebrated Easter. The drinking was interesting because you learn that, try that, starting that in your 30s. I said the F word for the first time when I was 33. Didn't get
Wow.
struck by lightning. So yeah, so that's sort of like zooming up to, what, 17, 16, 17 years ago. So in that time, I built probably about five different companies. The one that lasted the longest was a social media agency that I ran for 9 years. But I quickly fell out of love with that after the 9 year because I was good at it, but I didn't like it. And so when I got out of that, I moved into high performance coaching and I thought, ha, I love this. This is what I want to do. But the more I researched about high performance and peak performance and what it really means to thrive, the more I realized that the cult was still here and it was still here. And I was exhibiting self-sabotaging behaviors that I didn't understand why they were. I'm a smart person. I study this stuff. So why am I doing it? Where is this coming from? So probably about 4 years ago, it started my obsession with why do we know what we're supposed to do, but we don't do it? Where does that inconsistency come from? Where does that self-sabotage when like you can almost feel yourself doing it? And you know it's going to hurt you. You know it's going to be painful for you. You know something's going to go wrong. You're going to lose a client. You're going to lose a job. You're going to lose a deal. You're going to drop the ball. You can see it and you can't. You're like a freight train out of control. Why? Right? And so I had to go into what that cult had programmed me to believe and think and feel and start to pull apart the pieces so I can make sense of it. So in the past 4 years, I have literally reprogrammed my brain. It's an ongoing process, but I've understood that there's three main areas that cause us to stay in that self-sabotaging kind of mindset. And one of them is mindset, but it's more, I call it aligned beliefs. And there's sort of subsets of these, but the three big pillars are what we believe, what we do, and the habits we practice. And so so behind me there is three books, and each one is a successive, okay, I think I've narrowed down what the solution is. Like, what did I actually do to save myself here and here, right? Well, I don't have two hearts here. And the answer came down to, what I've developed, which is understanding what it takes to close the gap between knowing and doing. And that's sort of where I come to today with the methodology that I use in my private practice and with a more affordable, sort of very scalable program that's available to the public, which is called the Mountain Method, which is those three main pillars, beliefs, actions, habits, sort of split down to a much easier step-by-step process anyone can follow to stop the self-sabotaging cycle, the patterns that produce pain, and replace it with something that produces joy.
So belief, actions, and habits.
That's correct.
And you mentioned before we started recording that you have an assessment that
Yes.
will score 12 different areas that keep people in this knowing doing gap. What do you call
Yes.
those
So the
12 different,
gap
what are those 12 factors?
elements.
12 elements.
Elements.
Okay.
Yeah. So the 12 elements of the mountain methodology. So there's three under beliefs, there's three elements under actions, and there's six habits of high performance that are backed by science. So, because I'm a scientist at heart, I love proof. So one of the things as a coach that people love is they love that instant win, that instant, like, just tell me where I'm at, right? And so the assessment I have scores people on those 12 sort of sub elements of the mountain method The lowest scores are the biggest contributors to the gap. So immediately right out of the gates, when you start to work with me with this private practice or my 100 Days to Peak Performance program, which is the affordable version, they know exactly where they stand. So as long as you're honest with your assessment, because it's a self-assessment, so you have to be, good mood, not rushed. Don't, cat didn't poop in your shoe or something like that, make you mad, right? So do the assessment, get your score, and then roll through the programs. And then the cool thing is you retake it again at the end. My private practice is an ongoing coaching, so but I still make him take it every 3 months. So you have the first assessment and the end assessment, and the gap, the performance delta is how much you have closed the gap. And on average, for the affordable 100 days program that I have, that closing of the gap is 33%. So if you can imagine, continue to practice the frameworks and the different strategies of the mountain method. If you can continue to practice those long after you're done the coaching, long after the course is done, you will continue to close that gap until it doesn't exist anymore. And then there is no friction. There is no jump, there's no question, there's no self-doubt, there's no self-sabotage between this is what I know and therefore this is what I do.
So we're closing the gap between what we know we should do and what
Mhm,
we're actually doing. It's called the mountain method. We're
mhm.
scoring three elements of
So
belief,
three
three
pillars, but
elements of
12,
action,
12. Sorry,
and six high performance habits backed by science.
that's right.
And of course, this works for salespeople and business owners to help them increase their sales,
Mhm,
but it also works with helping people find love. Please
mhm.
explain how that works.
Well, think about it. I know what to do to go and find a good mate. I know that I need to leave my house. I know that I need to, have a shower every once in a while. I know that I need to be able to talk to people I don't know. And if I am not good at talking, I know that I can go to like Toastmasters and practice, or I know that I can go with a friend and they'll be my wingman and they can help. So there's, even if you don't have the skill, either what support you can get it or how you can develop that skill, right? So it's not a matter that we know what to do and we have skills. Sometimes we need to develop the skill, but we know where to get it or who can help us out. So if you can imagine, for the same reasons, right? What do we believe about ourselves? What do we feel? So beliefs, the three elements of beliefs are how we feel. So our emotional resilience. So it's not a matter of like going into your feelings and, you can, and I highly recommend therapy because it's wonderful to learn more about yourself. But
Hmm.
what emotional resilience is understanding the role emotions play. 95 of our percent of our decisions are emotional based. So why don't we understand it? Instead, we go with I just need to know more. Doesn't work because the emotion brain doesn't think. That's why we can say I know what to do. Why am I not doing it? The culprit is, yeah, but you don't know how you feel about it. If you feel insecure about making a call, the best script in the world will never work. If you know exactly where to go, like, I wanted friends because I had no friends for years and years and years, because I was the resident weirdo. I knew what to do. I needed to go join something, but I felt so insecure, so unwanted, so unloved, so small that I never went and joined anything until my husband, basically gently, who's been doing this for 13 years now, took me by the hand, new husband, by the way, took me by the hand and like, let's give it a try. Like, not everyone's evil and gonna hurt you, and hurt your feelings. And it's been wonderful. But so under beliefs, it's how we feel about things and understanding the role that those feelings play. Then it's our automatic thoughts, what we think about ourselves, like I'm not good enough, I can't do this, I'm not smart, I'm too shy, identities we give ourselves, I'm a procrastinator, whatever. And then it's the thoughts and assumptions we have about the world. Nobody wants to hear me, right? You're a speaking coach. How many people come up to you like, well, why would anyone want to hear me from stage? I have lots of my clients who want to become speakers. Number one thing they say every single time, who wants to hear from me? Me.
Yeah.
I do. Somebody in the room needs to hear from you, and they're going to make a terrible decision because you didn't say anything. Right?
Hmm.
So the thought piece, so emotions and thoughts are two huge linchpins that if you can manage those two things, will probably close your gap by at least 50%. Just those two things. And there's still like 10 more that come after it in terms of the elements that comprise the full mountain method. But the third one, where a lot of people struggle actually, is what makes you happy. Like, what makes you happy? What work do you love to do? A lot of times I'll say, like, what work makes you happy? Like, well, what does it matter? I'll never get to do it. Well, you're right, not with that attitude. Yeah, because you just literally talked yourself out of it.
Yeah.
So what work, what schedule, what environment, what people, what things, what adventures, define it and then build boundaries around it. So aligned beliefs is a lot of taking the filters that we see the world through, the I'm not good enough filter, you pull that away, it gets clear on what I should do. Right? The whole nobody wants to talk to me, you pull that away, suddenly you see the audience is so welcoming and they're just eager to listen to you. Pull
Okay.
away.
Curious.
Go ahead.
Someone walking through life with an I'm not good enough.
Mm,
Um, I have this client who is like one of the most extraordinary, accomplished people
mhm,
I've ever met. She is a PhD. She is a certified wellness coach.
mhm.
She's a founder of a company. She's a former tech CEO. She's like
Wow.
been on the biggest stages in the world, best buds with like all of the celebrities, and we're getting ready to get her onto more stages. And she says something to the effect of like, I'm not good enough. Like I need to go win another award or like have another milestone. And I'm like,
Yeah. I've
so
seen that.
so how do you just remove the I'm not good enough from someone?
I change what they use to measure their own value. They're using other metrics that they do not control that are external validation as opposed to putting the measuring stick in their own heart and in their own mind. They value them usually, and again, I don't know or I can't diagnose, but most often when people do the not good enough, they are trying to guess what other people think of them and then they're trying to measure up to that. But it's like, it's like the magnet that you've got with the wrong way. It's the closer you get, the further it just bounces away and it always changes because we think we've got it wrong. And when you also have the filter of like not good enough, you misinterpret the feedback. So someone looks at you with like a bit of a blank face, you're like, "Oh my God, I think I'm so stupid." Meanwhile, they're like, "That was really, I really need to think about that." That's what they're thinking, but you've misinterpreted. And so you try harder. I lived that life. Try harder and harder and harder and harder. And if you don't win the awards, you're not good. Like, oh my God, like I don't have a trophy case behind me, ergo I am nothing. But that trophy case was what other people thought. And so what I do with those people's two things, I reevaluate their internal validation system, which they usually don't have any of. And then I also question them on how they talk to themselves, which is usually really, really mean. And I learned to talk to myself in really, really mean terms because I was supposed to be small. So I would make myself small by talking to myself in really mean terms. And so I've actually, I see therapists because they're fantastic and they really help me see what I can't. You can't read the label of the bottle that you're in. So that's where any external help, coaches, therapists, all those kinds of things can be really helpful. So we went through, she asked me, tell me what you say to yourself. I'm like, nope, that's real mean. It's not very nice.
Uh-huh.
And so what she said, and this is the exercise I would put this person through, say, okay, whatever situation I'm feeling bad, insecure, nervous about, say I made a mistake. Um, you know, I have two boys that are my own. I call two boys are my fault, and two kids are my husband's fault. We have four
Mhm.
kids. So imagine your two boys. They did this, made the same mistake. What would you say to them? I'm like, oh my God. I'd be like, all this kindness, all this support, da da da. Like, turn it in on you. Now say that to yourself. That was powerful because for someone like me, like even when I crashed my car, I didn't value myself enough to fight for me, but I fought for them. And
Hmm.
until I found that internal strength to also fight for me and say, okay, what do I want? What can I get that makes me happy? I use that as a means to lift myself out of a complete hole. And then but you're still in the hole. To get yourself all the way out, you have to find yourself worthy and valuable. And part of that is absolutely your inner monologue and the narrative that you allow to cycle through your head. And I will guarantee you that monologue of hers is nasty. And that's what I would do.
Mm, cool. I'm curious, what are three
Mhm.
things that you're grateful for from your experience being in a cult?
I'm grateful that my shame and guilt were big enough to keep me safe. Um, because I learned that at some stage I could shrink them to something more valuable. So, because there's no such thing as good or bad emotions. They're either too intense and distorting or they're manageable and they're useful, right?
Hmm.
Shame and guilt are just, and again, for those not familiar, shame is I am a bad person, guilt is I've done something. So that's the difference between the two.
Uh-huh.
And I use those mechanisms to force me into that smallness so that I didn't get in trouble and I wasn't punished. So, but I learned that an emotion can be big, but I can still have that same emotion and not be traumatized by it. So I'm grateful that I had that experience. I wouldn't have that experience of big and distorting to small and manageable if I hadn't had big and distorting, kind of emotions to begin with. Um, I'm grateful because it taught me the ultimate courage. When you have nothing on the other side, like imagine just jumping into absolute blackness. That's what I did. It taught me courage.
Yeah.
It taught me that I would have no love, I would have no family, I would have no job, I would have no money, I would have no support. And I didn't know how the world worked. I didn't know how to get cable. I didn't know how to go to the movies. I didn't know how to shop for clothes properly. I've never worn makeup. I just gave up on the whole thing because it's so complicated and I don't even know how women do it. God bless, but I gave up after an $800 Sephora run that went badly.
Uh,
Yeah, that was fun. And anyway, so I'm grateful for the courage that it taught me, but I'm also grateful that it taught me the importance of, and the cult didn't teach me this, but I learned that my definition of love and spirituality is mine.
hmm.
And no one can tell me what love means, and no one can tell me what it means to be spiritual. Because over the time that I was there, while I was in it, I was just like, this doesn't really make sense, because they were saying, different weird things. And but what I learned was like, but I know what I want my spiritual relationship to look like. And so despite the fact that I had all this, do this, do this, do this, do this from a rule-based perspective, it still taught me the power of kindness because there are rules in the Christian faith that are really good rules, right? Judge not that you be not judged. It's a good one. They should learn it, most of them.
Hmm.
And what love, like loving kindness truly is. There's other stuff that they just sort of take all the way too far. But if you just look at it and just bear how to behave like a really good human, as in most religions, there is a really good set of rules to live by. And I still think they're great rules. Like it's still good to be kind. It's still good to show gratitude. It's still good
Yeah.
to strive to help other people. And so I'm glad for that training because that's some of the training that I continue to use to this day.
Very good. Thank you. Okay, I'm really excited about your mountain method program that you've made affordable.
Mhm.
And I understand you're in talks with organizations that have tens of thousands of people that may all be
Yes,
taking the program at the same time, which is very cool.
very cool.
And it's 100 days.
That's correct.
So is that enough time to see measurable change? And what happens on day 101? Do people go back to their old ways? And how have you designed it to be like, life changing and permanent?
So I've studied the psychology of how to make change permanent in someone's life as a coach, and part of my impetus behind this was I get really tired of my clients going, "Well, I didn't do the work I was supposed to be doing." So part of this was absolutely self-serving. So first of all, 100 days. It's not all at once, like a 5 full day program, because you need time in between each session to apply the framework. So let me back this up all the way to the beginning. First of all, you need some understanding of what your gap is made of. That's where the assessment comes in. So we start there. And then you set a mountain that you're going to climb, a goal for the 100 days. You either want to get yourself in position to be making more money, or whatever it is. You want more time, you want more money, you want more freedom, you want to travel without taking your cell phone, name it. Okay, so that's the mountain you're going to be climbing. And it's to this goal that you will be applying all the frameworks and strategies. It is not a how-to course. Anyone in any industry can take it. And you, like I said, you don't even need to take it for business. You can take it for your own personal reasons as well. So each session is made up of a series of short videos, after which there's like a page in a workbook that comes with it that you would do some writing. And then there's a breakout, usually in pairs or in small groups, where you talk about that one portion of the session. And then it repeats that whole process. So video, workbook, breakout, video, workbook, breakout. The reason for that is A, nobody has an attention span. I'm ADHD autistic. So I built this thing for neurodivergence like me. So hoorah for all of us. So it's a short video. It's a short bit of writing, between 3 to 5 minutes tops, that you're doing some writing to apply whatever the video was teaching, which is me teaching from the video. The breakout, though, is how we get the long-term application of this, because to listen, you retain 5%. To write, you retain about 30 to 40%. To talk about something, you retain anywhere upwards of, I've seen 50 to 90%. There's just all that everybody argues about what the number is. But you get the most retention and the most long-term sustained results when you talk about things. So because you're talking about the topic within each class, which is 2 hours long, all the way through, first of all, it's a lot more interesting. Second of all, you don't need homework. All you're doing is like everything you've talked about, now go prove it. So it's not go do it, it's prove it. Prove that you can feel, your feelings, that you can address them.
Yep.
Prove that you can define your ideal client. Prove that you can do micro shifts in your energy when it comes to high performance habits. Just go and prove what you've already declared and created accountability for. And so the time in between is essential for people to just take that one tiny little step that they just learned in this class for 7 days, apply it to the mountain that they set. So there's your goal. How are you going to think differently about that? How are you going to, apply your action plan differently? How are you going to, create more meaningfulness behind what you do? And then you come back, do a quick recap. Okay, let's close the gap a little bit more. And every session is intended to close the gap, close the gap, close the gap. And the nice thing is, because they've been applying it all along and practicing it and talking about it, that gap does not widen again. I'm sure there's going to be a little bit, because you can't help little things crawling back in, but it doesn't snap back out again like 93% of people who get coaching never implement it at all.
Hmm.
So, but this is implementation over 100 days. And so and that gap closes. And at the end, you retake the assessment. And that's a really important reason, because by the time people get to the end, they don't think they're different,
Mm.
because that change has been so gradual. And that's why it doesn't snap back, because they can't remember that they used to think and feel and act in a different way. They always think they've been here, but the assessment shows them by just how much have they closed that gap. And that's why it's different from most of the programs that are out there.
Do you see this helping with addictions like quitting smoking, quitting drinking,
Absolutely. Hmm.
and diets?
Yes. Yes. I've had this help people with emergency surgeries that they were absolutely terrified of. They shared the strategies with their family, and together as a family, they practice the frameworks in the mountain method. And he credits it with faster healing, less stress, a lot less panic. It was an emergency. He was off for 3 weeks. They were nervous. It could have been life-threatening, all these things. And he said it never got to that breaking point of people feeling like it was too much. To help them with things like that, to help them with their personal relationships, less arguing between couples, because you just learn, okay, you know what? Let me look at the grand scheme of things of what's really going on, right? What do we believe and act in, and what are the habits that we have as a couple? How can we use this framework and this framework and this framework, right? Just pick the ones that you feel are the weakest in the relationship. And then you have this, again, very simple framework that is non-specific to any industry, or any particular, you know, classification. So you can use it to improve that. I've used it to improve my relationships with my children. Being a better parent. I have adult children. They're 20, 21, 22, and 28, right? And it really helps. And then I give them the framework. I'm like, hey, I'm going to teach this to you. And something you can use. And the ripple effect of that can be really, really powerful.
Speaking of the ripple effect, please tell me your grand vision for how far this work will reach.
Um, well, I aim small. Um, I want to reduce the world suffering. Um, I so haha. See, the cult programming coming in, don't say it. You can't do it, right? It's like, go away. So I first started in real estate because that's the industry in which I am most well known. I've been working in for the longest. My goal for real estate is every brokerage in North America will at least heard about this program in the next 5 years. Beyond that, like in the next, call it 10 to 15 years, this program or the iteration of this program will be a globally known entity and program that from Africa to Norway to Argentina and Canada, everyone knows that it exists and can use it and finds the joy that has been held down and held back for so long. And if, can you imagine? Okay, I'm just gonna leave this one little thought. The world that we create first starts in our head. Look at the world right now. It's a bit messed up. And
Hmm.
maybe it's just always been this messed up, but now we can see it because we have social media and sort of instant reporting, and then AI schmaltz language screws everybody up. What if, even by 1%, we can change the way the world thinks? 1%. 1% closing the gaps for everybody, whatever their gap is. How different does our world look? And if everybody understood that adding knowledge does not close a gap, you can't out know yourself, you can't out learn the problem because there's so much more, it's so complex. But if everybody did, what if they did? What if they did? I think the world would be a better place. That's the legacy I want to leave for myself.
Beautiful. Rebecca, how can people contact you, follow you, learn from you? And if someone wanted to take the Mountain Method program right now, is it available?
It is actually, we have several cohorts available starting in January. So if you go to my website, the easiest one is rebeccamountain.ca. So that's my main website. Look for the 100 Days program, and that'll take you to a site where you can, there's a button that says take the program. Click on that, find the date and time that suits you best. I have wonderful trainers who are waiting for people to sign up right now. It's only $350, and they are, they're dying to help. They've bought into the mission with me. And so that's what you go. So rebeccamountain.ca. If you want to follow me on socials, it's at Bex Mountain, BEX Mountain, because Mountain is my last name. And I would just love to, if you connect with me there and just send me a message, like even just the word 100, I'll send you the link immediately. Because that's what usually when I say, if you give me the code word of 100, I know you're looking for the program.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you for being here on the Expert Speaker Podcast. Wishing you all the success to make such a huge impact in the world.
Appreciate being here. Thank you so much.